Alright everyone, it is the last video of 2017. Of course, tomorrow a whole year will have elapsed. I'll be, it will be a year older. It'll be crazy. But I thought I'd go through some polling that I conducted informally, of course, on Twitter, and also a straw poll because there were way more than 4 possibilities for that one. The problem is, of course, as the list grows, things actually spread out more evenly usually. So it makes sense to sometimes artificially limit things. Some people are saying, actually, Estevel there, one of my Twitter followers, I'm pretty sure he's a leftist. Sometimes he assumes I think I'm far right. And he jumped down my throat, and then, like, the next poll that I made was actually the kind of poll that he wanted. Because, of course, it's not just the left that makes mistakes, it's also the right. So I want to go through the poll results first. And then I'm going to give a little bit of my thoughts of the year, sort of recap some of my work, where it's going for 2018, and just generally have a little bit of banter here about how I feel that the last, 364-ish days actually went, what I expect and hope for in the next. So I'm going to get into the polls first. Now, most of these I did on Twitter. But then there was also one on straw poll. Now, they're not 100% closed yet, so when this is uploaded, there might be like 2 minutes left in polling. Now, I think on the first one, I was going to do 4 hours. I accidentally did, I think, 4 days. So that'll be up for a while, but I'm going to tell you the results as they stand now. The first poll's results. Who should win the coveted Stupid Internet Award for 2017? And, of course, the 4 possibilities here. Cenk Uygur, you'll remember, of course, for his problematic blog from years ago that got exposed, and that was it was very funny. And his PAC dropped him, and his popularity is a bit on the skids at the moment. Right Wing Watch, of course, for their defamation piece on over a dozen different large YouTubers, the collective audience of several million people. Not necessarily a fight that Right Wing Watch can win. I guess they overestimated themselves. You see, Pat Robertson's fans are all over 80. They don't care what happens online. A little bit different when you're talking about YouTube, I think. VidMe, of course, you'll remember the alternative to YouTube, born actually, I think, in late 2016, begins to grow through 2017, then completely flatlines, gets taken off on December 15th. And then Mark Zuckerberg, of course, Facebook's attempt at censorship. So vastly stupid now that they had to actually rescind it. Now, don't try to tell me for a minute that Zuckerberg doesn't like censoring things. It gives him a power trip, I think. He's a Generation 2.1 synth, so he's slightly more realistic, but he's still basically very robotic and strange, and people key into that, they understand. And the winner is Cenk Uygur, now with 45% of the vote. Oddly enough, I would have sworn that Mark Zuckerberg would have won, because Facebook is generally disliked. The Young Turks is also generally disliked, but it's maybe more partisan, whereas Facebook has pissed off at this point, I think, a lot of the left as well. So it's very funny. Zuckerberg in second place with 27%. VidMe, oddly enough, losing for a second time in the same month of the same year, coming in last with only 7%. So I thought that was even funnier. End of the year poll number 2 results. Over the following year, what of these issues is your biggest concern? The 4 choices: terrorism, of course, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whatever. Economic downturn, some people have been discussing inflation, bubbles, cryptocurrency collapse, things of that nature. War, North Korea probably number 1, Iran maybe number 2, and then World War III, the most important, but maybe a distant third. And then censorship or suppression, the tech firms, the legacy media, the political establishment as it begins to lose power even more. Winning with that with 61%, an overwhelming majority of the vote, censorship and suppression. Not necessarily surprising because, of course, people who are looking at this, they know me on the web. Internet presence tends to be more, worried about that. Maybe the normies, if they weighed in on it, they'd probably choose war, honestly. So perhaps we're seeing a generational difference there as well. End of the year poll number 3. What is your current level of approval for President Trump? Now, this is, in full disclosure, I'm well aware of the fact my audience is heavily slanted towards support for Trump, specifically because of my style of content. Even if I myself am only mildly in support of him, I would have been somewhat approve, honestly. on this poll. But as someone who's not a Republican or a conservative, even then, my predictions regarding the election, I'm aware that a lot of people are hardcore Trump fans if they're on my channel. Winning that with 62%, again, an overwhelming majority, mostly approve, 28% for somewhat approve, and then 5% apiece for somewhat or mostly disapprove. Again, that has to do with the slant of my audience. I'm well aware of that. But I mean, yeah, I get a poll on it. It's an important topic anyway. I wanted to take a reading of where my audience is too. End of the year poll number 4. This one's just for yucks, basically, shits and giggles. Which Sticks meme is best meme? Actually quite funny, Spoon Clank, 10.2, or Doozy. Of course, the Doozy thing from our weather, actually, within Vermont. Winning with 57% of the vote, Spoon Clank. Actually quite funny, and 10.2 tied in second place with 20%. And Doozy a distant third at 3%. I'm not sure that I'm surprised about this result. Actually, I'm slightly surprised 10.2 wasn't further ahead of actually quite funny, but yeah, I can deal with that. Some people were saying that that all right YouTube or that's about all peace out should be on there. You can only put in 4 entries on a Twitter poll. They haven't expanded it yet. They should expand it to 6. That would be better. Right now, strawpoll.me would vastly outcompete them on anything more complex than a 4-way poll. End of the year poll number 5. This is shout out to Estevel Stevens for, desiring this specifically, but I was actually planning on making this, and a counterpart, far left mistakes. Vote for the worst right-wing / GOP mistake of the year. And I understand those aren't synonymous, but you've got to put those two together. Nikki Haley and Bonomo, of course, backstory. Some Russian prankers pretending to be Polish minister actually got her to weigh in on the state of the nation, the island nation of Bonomo, which of course does not exist. She's the U.S. ambassador to the UN. She should know, I would think, at least somewhat advanced geography. That was very funny. And that was only, I think, a week ago. Number 2, Roy Moore and his horse ride. Of course, a big meme at the time for several days was he literally does not know how to ride a horse. He tries to show up to look the part of the right-wing, I guess, Southern cowboy. He ends up looking like he was just really drunk at the time. Number 3, Jeff Sessions on drugs. Of course, for perhaps the first time, the drug policy of Jeff Sessions directly countermanded by even his own staff, who are saying, hey, he doesn't know anything about this issue. He believes in reefer madness. And everyone thought that was very funny. Number 4, the Never Trumpers. Of course, that faction of the right in the GOP. Honestly, some of these people are further right than Trump that simply appear desirous of destroying their own political movement. Winning this overwhelmingly, again, 55% of the vote, the Never Trumpers. Jeff Sessions coming in second with 21%. I am very surprised that more people are not saying Nikki Haley was the biggest mistake. You've got someone who literally represents our nation to the UN. I know Trump may not prioritize the UN, but she's not an unintelligent individual, and yet she's willing to take the call of a couple of prankers. Russians, no less. Here's your Russian involvement with the Trump admin, by the way, who pretend to be the prime minister of Poland or the foreign minister or whatever of Poland. She believes it and then continues to expound on a nation that doesn't even exist. And no, if you think there's a question in your mind of whether it's even real, you should say, talk to my staff on this one. I think would have been a better thing for Nikki Haley to have said. End of the year poll number 6, vote for the worst left-wing / Democratic mistake of the year. Number 1, the resist movement, #resist, of course, which has basically fallen apart. What once maybe was millions of people is now basically just a Twitter and Facebook meme. That's what it's devolved into. Clinton no longer talks about it either. Number 2, Fusion GPS, of course, the most major scandal going on right now. It gives Trump an inordinate proportion of leverage over the Democrats, makes them and the media look culpable. It's really a panacea to all of Trump's problems. He can just default to talking about the Democrats' scandals, and at least for his core fans, it does work. Number 3, the Al Franken scandal. Of course, you've got photographic evidence of a sitting senator groping a woman. He denies it, but then other people come out and say he's doing creepy stuff. He really sinks his own career. The Democrats that originally supported him, because I think they were slightly confused as to how many victims there were, very quickly they become very silent on the issue. I would have put Conyers in here perhaps, but it wouldn't have made sense. I think with Franken, photographic evidence is slightly beyond just a settlement in terms of how compelling it is, at least in my opinion. And then number 4, Hillary Clinton's whining, of course, for the entire year. Think about it, an entire year, the hallmark of her contribution to the entire left, or you could say, was whining, blaming other people for her mistakes and for her corruption. And the winner is the resist movement with 43%. I am, again, surprised by the result. I expected Hillary Clinton to run away with this one. I expected her to be at like 70%. It looks like the resist movement is even more pathetic, get it, than Hillary Clinton. That's quite something in my mind. And then end of the year poll number 7, and I've actually got to pull up the results here. Because this has to do specifically with my content in the involvement with other people. I made, I believe, over 20 appearances over the last year on other people's channels and so forth. I'm talking Malnu, Sargon, Medicare, all sorts of people. I wanted to get a feel for what maybe the top individuals that I made appearances with. Which ones did my fans potentially like the most? They enjoyed them the most, or thought were the most entertaining, intelligent, whatever. So I'll read off the top 5 actually here, because I think it's worth it to go that far. Number 1, Stefan Molyneux. I'm not sure that I'm particularly surprised by the fact that he's on top. I think, didn't I make 3 different separate appearances? It wasn't just the Christmas special, but I had spoken with him I think twice before that as well. So it's not just one isolated appearance. And really the first appearance I did with him, as far as like taking a reading from my subscriber count, it was massive. It was thousands of people that jumped aboard my channel. So probably some of those, now they've stayed around on the content, they're probably on the Twitter and literally voting here. But I had a great time talking with Molyneux. I'll say especially when he had the proper fashion for the upcoming year. This is going to be the big fashion for 2018. A jacket, leather, black, no undershirt. That's the way to go. Trust me, it's going to be big. You're going to see Trump come out dressed like that at some point, I predict. I say that like jokingly, but it would be legendary if he did do that, or someone had like a candid photo of that. Heads would explode. They'd be like, whoa, you know, what the hell's going on? And it'd be very 80s too, which is pure Trump. So yeah, it could be slightly an ode to him as well. It's pretty awesome. Number 2, Sargon of Akkad with 16%. Molyneux had 21, Sargon has 16, at least as I'm looking at it here. Again, not a huge surprise. The Thinkery is where I specifically was hosted there. But his content, I think we have a substantial amount of overlap in our audiences, number 1. Because in some cases our political views are similar. We have some differences, but I think more similarities than differences on a lot of issues. Now, I enjoyed talking to him. He's actually a very funny dude as well, very humorous. Number 3, Mr. Medicare. Again, not sure that I'm particularly surprised as well with the Kilroy stuff. We seem to have crossed paths a second time, actually, literally within the last week on this issue. Warski would also be associated with that particular event. I had a great time talking to him too, and I think his irreverence, honestly, is a breath of fresh air on YouTube, where some of the content, it's getting more tame, and he's more like, I think Medicare's more like, you know, who cares? I'm just going to keep pushing limits and we'll see what happens. I think that might be a wise strategy too. When you don't back down, it's a good thing. Number 4, Elizabeth's Philosophy. Now, I've been on her channel multiple times as well, because there's not just an overlap with maybe the political side, but also with the spiritual side. And you've got to understand, a lot of the people that I've spoken with are specifically just, it's political chat, almost completely. There is no real, there may be a philosophical component, but there's no spiritual component. But there, it can be intertwined with the occult, which is what I've been doing for some time. So again, not surprised. And then number 5, Lionel Nation. I think Lionel's one of the most intelligent people I've ever spoken with. Verbally speaking, I think, bar none, he would be number 1 on all of YouTube. Way out ahead of me, way out ahead of, I think, anybody else. His command of language alone, the minuteness of how long it takes him to react to things in an intelligent manner, is extremely impressive. I think he should probably start debating people. He should definitely go on Warski's like blood sport sort of stuff, because he would win every time, I think. I don't think there is another individual that I've ever met that could go up against him. Honestly, I would give him that endorsement there. It's insane. I'm just going to go through this a little bit more. Then you've got, of course, Paul Joseph Watson from InfoWars. It was actually on InfoWars, which I didn't at first know, and I was like, whoa, when I saw it. It was actually streaming on InfoWars' official Facebook page. I'm like, well, you know, this is going to be pretty big. I can't wait to see how many people watch it. Of course, it's substantial. Now, Red Ice, Matt and Blonde, of course, their show. Andy Warski, who I only just got done talking to, you'll remember. Lauren Southern. I also made appearances with Brittany Pettibone, Semiagog, H.A. Goodman, Tara McCarthy, Lauren Rose, Coach Red Pill, Western Front, the college Republicans at UTEP, which a lot of people didn't know about. I don't think I actually shared it out because originally it was on the actual interviewer's channel, and then it was hosted there later. So I didn't know at the time what to share out, and by the time I saw it, it was, you know, weeks later. I'm like, well, you know, basically, fuck me. Red Elephants, and then FSN Gold and Silver, which I made 2 separate appearances on. Altogether, I would say there hasn't been any interaction that I've had with anyone, though, that was a bad thing. Honestly, I've enjoyed it all. And I've actually got a conversation coming up in the middle of January that a lot of people have asked me to actually do. So I'm going to be doing that, and I'm actually very happy about it, too. It's someone that has been specifically requested several times in the last 24 hours by different people. I won't mention who it is. You know, like the day before, I'll say, you know, upcoming appearance on, and having a chat with insert person that I'm not going to tell you yet here. It's a surprise. It's going to be a good one, though. It's a fairly major uploader, someone I've spoken to before. I think that we have some overlap in our politics. I expect it's going to be a fun time. So yeah, I've made a lot of appearances. That's one of the highlights of the last year, honestly. Other highlights, the literary sales skyrocketed. So, you know, book-wise, I'm extremely happy. I'm well ahead of where I ever expected to be at this point, and have been consistently since the beginning of the year. A lot of the successes, I think, of 2017 were prefaced on the last few months of 2016. That is, with the election, and the fact that I was talking about it consistently, correctly predicted the outcome. I think someone said on the stream on Warski's stream that they had won $3,000 betting based on my prediction of the election. And I was like, yeah, you know, that's some heavy stuff right there. By the way, disclaimer, for the midterms or 2020, I cannot personally endorse you doing that. Because even though I do have a clue about what's going on, there's always the chance that I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong and you lose a bunch of money, I don't want you basically blaming me if you bet based on what I say and then lose money. Taking it to that step is something that I don't gamble. I don't make bets on anything. I just analyze. I can make predictions, but I would never put money down no matter how certain I was. I could be 99.999% certain. I would never do that. It's just not something that I'm interested in doing. I'm not a risk taker when it comes to that. I like to be very stable. Kind of boring when it comes to money. So the sound investment stuff that a lot of people within the millennial generation just they're not inclined towards doing for some reason. I think over the coming year, I would say I expect growth to continue. For the United States, economically. I expect things to improve politically. I expect things to restabilize at the political level slightly. I think at this point, the old guard media and establishment are almost so busy attacking the alt media and actual independent creators and stuff. Like Lauren's from the Daily Beast. The first video of next year, tomorrow, will actually be on that topic. Because she was acting like YouTubers, alt media YouTubers need the lamestream media to give them interviews and stuff to justify their existence. She's like, haha, they ask for compensation. Trust me, if you want me to come on and willingly get defamed by you, you'd better be paying me to do it. Just like I would expect if I said, hey, you want to come on my channel? You probably, as a pundit, would say, yeah, but there has to be some sort of arrangement made. You know, maybe not the changing of money from hand to hand, but there's going to be some sort of understanding beforehand about what is or is not the subject, what's asked and stuff. You want to blindside YouTubers because you're corrupt. And I expect that to continue. As I said on Red Ice and Jaworski, the biggest threat, I think, over the coming year are attacks by corporatists. That is, the lamestream media, the multi-billion-dollar multinational media firms like a CNN or a Fox. Well, trust me, the Fox will attack you too, so will Breitbart. Attacks by them, the political establishment, sort of the morally grandstanding, especially local politicians like a McAuliffe or something, that they get like holier than thou, and they're like, oh, well, this fringe movement caused violence, even if they didn't. And that happens all the time. And by craptivists, the social justice warrior craptivist crowd. I expect those three groups, led by a bunch of haranguing opportunist shills, to continue to attack the alternative media. Now, long term again, I am optimistic about us overcoming them because we've got the advantage of faster growth, we've got the advantage of higher efficiency, and we've got the advantage of audiences that have personally communicated with us. They don't see us as distant. They see us as someone that they can talk to. Because you all interact with my content. I can comment on your stuff at a whim. I can go and comment on stuff you've made, or I can talk to you on my content. You can talk to me here, or maybe on your own content if I've commented there. Are you going to get a comment from Obama? Are you going to get a comment from the CEO of CNN? Or from Mark Zuckerberg? It's probably not going to happen. They're at a disadvantage when it comes to fighting the alt media and alt entertainment. I saw a hit piece earlier. I'll say this. You know, the last hit piece I can talk about of 2017 on PewDiePie. I think it was Business Insider that posted it. And they're like, oh, PewDiePie has slowed down. He may have achieved like peak popularity. And YouTubers, maybe they're finding out they can't make a living off YouTube anymore. It's like, trust me, I feel just fine. I've doubled my audience in 2017. I might double it again in 2018. At the very least, I expect to hit 250,000 next year. That's a hell of a lot of support. Meanwhile, they're sitting there, they're losing their audience. They feel happy if they gain a little bit back by cannibalizing some other legacy media apparatus. The total pool of people is shrinking for them. The total pool for us is growing. It doesn't particularly matter if we're competing for a number of minutes that people spend on the content overall because the pool is growing. Our lake is filling up and the fish are getting bigger. Just because one fish grows more than another doesn't mean that generally across the board those fish are getting pretty fat and sassy. Meanwhile, the legacy media lake is a lot bigger maybe, but it's starting to shrink and they're losing out. And some of the bigger ones, they can no longer sustain themselves. Ha, ha, ha. Funniest thing I ever saw to see them suffer because, I mean, they deserve it. They're the ones that start wars. Anyone that's worried that some like Paul Joseph Watson image posted earlier by another lamestream pundit, and they were like, oh, Paul Joseph Watson can't be taken seriously, and it was basically one of these BuzzFeed reporters asked him a question about, oh, why didn't you fact check this before reporting because it was false, and his response, I guess in a message, I believe, was BuzzFeed is fake news, BuzzFeed is cancer. And he's like, okay, I get that, but why didn't you fact check it? Fact check my ass. The legacy media fact checks very little at this point. Most of what they report on is speculation, bias, and spin. So I actually respect Paul Joseph Watson, I'll say more after seeing that too. I guess it was an attempt to smear his character, but that actually makes me feel more positive about like patronizing his material. Because actually, it's true. Why should you have reverence for people? Oh, we are the press. Look at us in our suits and our multi-million-dollar studios. We are so holy and intrinsic to the Constitution. No, you're not. You're a technological throwback that still does newsprint. Who fucking cares about what BuzzFeed says? Who cares about the New York Times, the Atlantic, the CNNs and stuff? So I feel great about the last year. Despite being defamed several times by the media. I know it wasn't just the Right Wing Watch thing. I think there was a Mashable or some other article that mentioned me, and they're like, oh, far right, / libertarian vlogger. And it's like, yeah, okay, a libertarian, yes, far right, absolutely not. Come and actually talk to me about my fucking views before you put that down, or you're going to look like an ass, basically. I've been defamed several times by the legacy media, the online level legacy media, which is basically, it's a sort of the missing link between us and the real old guard, like a New York Times or something. I've been defamed several times. I've been algorithmically demoted by YouTube. I've had certainly Twitter demoting my material. Don't try to tell me that that's not happening, because a lot of people tell me on various platforms they don't find things. VidMe, which I actually put an inordinate proportion of my early effort into, goes kaput, which means I have to make up for some lost time with like BitChute, PewTube. I would love to try Steam it, but I still haven't gotten... I registered. I still haven't gotten an email, though, so, you know, it's like, you know, fuck me. Despite all of these setbacks, though, overall progress has been decent and steady throughout the entire year, month after month. I was looking just at literary sales for rolling periods of 3 months, and it's grown in each period consistently. I think last year it did, too, for the last half of the year. To an inordinate proportion. As far as the subscriber base, I started off this year with under 100,000 subscribers. I now have almost 200,000. I believe it's roughly a doubling of the number of people who are on this channel. View-wise, even after YouTube deleted 4 or 5 million views, I'm assuming every year or so they do that because of deleted accounts. Those views no longer get counted. Accounts that are suspended for like botting or whatever, and they roll things back a bit. Subscriber counts periodically will fall by a few hundred or thousand too, and people act mystified. That's because YouTube is taking off the subs that deleted their channels or that got suspended. So that is actually normal. That's not YouTube trying to censor or harass you. YouTube does that in other ways. Trust me. Mainly algorithmically. You can look at your view count and subscriber counts and tell when you're being manipulated versus when they change it again and solve the problems that they themselves have created. But despite all this, I hit 60 million views, which was great. And other people's growth, I'm looking across the board, people are really launching ahead as far as the alt media goes. And I'm really, really happy about that. By the way, coming next year, yes, I will continue occasionally doing MRE videos. The problem is it takes a better setup. But soon that may not be a problem, and I'll tell you why. And here's an announcement, sort of last announcement of this year. Over the coming weeks, my hope is, and certainly over the coming month, I'm going to be building a much better recording setup, something far more sophisticated than it is now. I'm going to invest some more money into it. As far as the camera, I don't think there's any way I can improve on that without getting like a digital camera with like a wide-angle lens and all that stuff. The audio ultimately is good. It's just I've got to work out a different setup, but I will be investing in literally an entire sort of office as opposed to a part of a room that is dedicated to recording. That's going to be done over the coming weeks. So that would be a treat for people, I hope. It'll be more sophisticated. I need a bigger desk too because I tend to get a little bit cluttered because I have like different things around me, and you know I want the wine on one side and I've got all sorts of stuff. I'm also building a collection other than the bamboo wall hangs that I showed people. I will, because I've gotten a bunch more of those, I'm going to have some display cases. I swear to God, I'm going to have like a little miniaturized museum. I'm going to take you through that. There will be more occult videos. I will sporadically do Vermont videos. I might do maybe one a week at most, though. I didn't want to do any more for the end of this year. I wanted to focus on other things. And then people are expecting other content, like gaming. I know people want another episode of Fallout. But, I mean, it's New Year's Eve, so I'm not going to do that today because a lot of people won't even watch it. They want a recap, I think, of the year. So, in other words, this is the final video of the year, almost a half an hour long now. Those are the poll results. I have fun polling people on Twitter. And so, yeah. And also, I hope to do more appearances next year. Keep in mind, though, I tend to prioritize. I know it may sound slightly unfair or, you're getting out of touch. Time-wise, though, because I do other things, it's not just YouTubing, it's also writing and editing, I do have to prioritize appearances by people who have larger audiences, typically. It doesn't have to be YouTube. It could be, hey, you've got a blog that's really popular. You've got, a podcast or something. That's fine. I will tend to prioritize people who wish to speak with me, interview, or have me aboard a stream, like a chat or something. I will tend to prioritize those who have larger audiences, especially if they don't overlap with mine, like it's something totally different from the kind of content that I do. Just out of a sense of self-preservation, because this is part of my work, and I want to get my word out there more and more. Because in order to combat the legacy media, it's going to take more support than I have or any of us have. We need to hold together. That's sort of the final idea of this year. We're going to be coming under steady fire from the legacy media especially. We're also going to come under fire from the political establishment. It does not matter. Trust me when I say this. It doesn't matter if you're a skeptic or alt-right or a libertarian or radical centrist, as they call it, classical liberal, an actual leftist. You will come under fire if you're making content. If you are calling them out as the corrupt idiots they are, you will come under fire. There's a chance you get defamed. There's a chance that they attack you in some other way. So we need to stick together on these tokens. That's about all. Peace out, and have a safe rest of the year, the few hours that are left.